Hello, hi everyone. So welcome to week 2 of the class. Um, just to recap what we have learned last week. Last week we have learned about the probability sampling technique and the non-probability sampling technique. And I hope that all of you have, um, like are able to differentiate between the techniques, all the 8 techniques in the probability and the non-probability sampling technique. So we have discussed all of this last week, and if there's any question about the probability sampling and non-probability sampling technique, please let me know in our discussion later on. And so for today, we are going to further discuss our topic, our second subtopic in this chapter, that is on the requirements of a good sample. So by end of this section, you should be able to understand the definitions to make the notion of a good sample more precise. And let's look at the definition of terms given here. Okay, so let's look at the first one here. The first one is the, wait a minute, I need to make sure it is working. Okay, all right. So the first term is the observation unit. Basically, it is also known as an element, in which element is an observation unit in our study. So uh, each uh, each individual unit in our study is called an element. For example, if our study is about to is to study human, so every human, every people in our study is an observation unit, or also known as the element. Number 2 is the target population. The target population in our study is all elements under our study. Okay, it can be a living or non-living thing. If you would like to study about human, then the target population is human. If you, it can also be like the water, like you would like to study the 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 content of the water, so it can also be a non-living object. Number 3 is sample. Okay, so sample is a subset or a part of a population. So let's say I draw here, yeah. So let's say this is your population. Let's say, for example, in this class we have like n is equal to 30 students, and as a researcher you only want to have like a smaller sample, okay, part of the population. So this is the sample. It is called a sample because it is part of the population. We do not use every observation unit in the population. Okay, so whenever we use, for example, 15 out of 30 uh, 30 students in this class, so that 15 selected students are a sample. Sampling is what we have discussed previously. It is the process of selecting sample from the interest population. Okay, so we have discussed all the 8 techniques in the probability and the non-probability sampling technique. Number 5 is the sampling frame. So the sampling frame is basically a list of sampling units used to select the sample. Now let's look at this example again. Okay, so we have 30 students, right? So all these 30 students, the list name of all students in the class is the sampling frame. Okay, the list name of all students in this class is the sampling frame. The next one is the sampling unit, is the elements listed in the frame. What is the element listed here? For example, if we would like to study the students' performance, so the element of our study is the students. But on the other hand, if you would like to study about the household income, so the element of the study is the household. It depends who is your sample and how do you sample or randomly select samples from the population. It depends on the availability of the sampling frame also. And number 6 Number 7 is the pilot study. Is a study done on a small scale before the actual study. And for this one is usually we will have a pre-test first, okay, to test our questionnaire. And once we have done with the pre-test, only then we will proceed with the pilot test. And usually we will select 30 samples to validate our questionnaire, to check on the reliability, and then if everything is okay, only then we can proceed with our actual study. Okay, and then number 8 is sample survey, a study done based on sample. Okay, so this is actual study is also known as the sample survey. Okay, and on the other hand, if you use every unit in the population or every students in the population, let's say, so if we use every unit in the population, it is called a census. Instead of using 15 here, no, you use all 30 students. It means that you are conducting a census. It is no longer a sample survey. And if you conduct a census, for example, let's say from the 30 students, okay, all information generated, let's say you generated the mean score, or you generated the anything, any statistical analysis generated from the list from all 30 students here, it is called as a parameter. Okay, however, if let's say the statistics generated based on the sample, this one, okay, if it is based on the sample, then let's say the mean, it is called, this is a statistics. Okay, this is a statistics, and this one is a parameter. This one is a parameter. Okay, so statistics and data. The next one is data. All of us already know what is data. It is a collection of observation, measurement, or information obtained from study that is carried out. It can be a qualitative data, it can be a quantitative data, and the data can be in form of like images, stats, numbers, and so on. And variables or attributes are a single aspect or characteristic associated with each of large group of individuals under consideration. It is basically what we would like to study is in the data, okay, and it is called a variable. Okay, now let's look at the next one, is getting the sample population. Okay, and this is how we get our sample population, and why not everybody in our target population can be our sample or can be selected as our sample. That is because let's look at this example. The target population and sample population in a telephone survey of likely voters. Okay, so let's look at the first one. Okay, let's say you would like to conduct a study on registered voters. Okay, so those who are not registered as voters, even though they are eligible to become a voters, those who age 18 years old and above in Malaysia are eligible to become a voters. But if any of them do not register, then automatically they are not eligible for our survey. Why? Because our survey is focusing on the registered voters only. And the next one is the data collection method that you would like to use is, for example, a telephone survey, or you would like to use the computer assisted telephone interview, okay, CAR-T. And we know that in today's world, everybody is using smartphone, and there is, I think, only minority of the people is still using the landline phones. So what happened is we may not have the list of all um, voters, okay, list of all voters, because not all of them are equipped with a landline phone. Okay, so what happened is voters who are not associated with landline phones will not be included in the sampling frame, because let's say your sampling frame, the list of all elements in the population, okay, the list of all elements in the population that you only have is based is those who who have telephone numbers, landline phone numbers. So those who don't have the landline numbers, then they are not included in the sampling frame. Okay, and let's say for example, you have um, other data collection method that you would like to use, and let's say you also use a computer assisted personal interview, and maybe some of the voters are not reachable because um, they are not at home even after 3 times of call, or even after 3 times of visiting their houses. So this will not become the sample population. And in Malaysia, usually the response rate for national level studies are within between 50% to 70%, and this is the response rate. Yeah, this is the response rate. So the response rate is usually low at the urban areas. So what happened is many of the respondents, randomly selected respondents, refuse to respond, and ethically we cannot force them to become part of our study. So again, they will not become the sample population, and some of them may not also be able to respond to our survey, maybe due to their health condition, maybe because of other reasons. So only this sample population will become the respondents of our survey. Okay, now let's look at the next subtopic 1.3, that is on the selection bias. And by end of this session, you should be able to understand the meaning of selection bias and how it can occur. Okay, now let's look at the first one. Examples where selection bias can occur is when using a sample selection procedure that is unknown to the investigators depends on the some characteristics associated with the properties of interest. So this one is very interesting because this depends on the some characteristics associated with the properties of interest. So let's say, for example, guys, in a study, or we know that there are two types of people. Basically, commonly we have two types of people. The first one is extrovert and introvert. These two types of people, they possess different characteristics. So for those who are extrovert, they tend to like maybe they have no problem cooperating with us and become part of our survey. And introvert may not want to become part of the survey. No, do not want to become part of the survey. So these two types of people, there are reasons of why they would like to take part in our survey or not, because maybe for some there are some sensitive questions that they do not want to expose to anyone else, everybody else. So what happened is, if let's say you only get extrovert to become the sample of your survey by using maybe convenience sampling technique, then what happened is what you will get out of here is an overestimate statistics. Okay, overestimate value. I would say value. Okay, and why I say that the value generated here is overestimated. That is because we do not include who are introvert. Those who are introvert, we do not include. For example, in a survey, an extrovert might be happy in everything. For example, so they will respond 5, 4, 5 for, let's say 5 is for very happy, and 4 is happy. And an introvert might respond neutral, happy, and maybe 2 not happy. So if your respondents only consists of extrovert, this is what you get. And if your respondents only consists of introvert, then this is what you get. So in total, if we only take into account these responses, then it will be an overestimate value or overestimated statistics. That is the first one. And the second one is deliberately or purposefully selecting a representative sample. Okay, some of the researchers, they do not implement ethics in their research, and let's say they have come up with a hypothesis, and what they want to do is they want to make sure that the hypothesis that has been stated here is approved. Okay, for example, approved. Okay, so what happened is the researcher will deliberately select a sample to confirm their opinion. Okay, to confirm their opinion. For example, the hypothesis stated that most shoppers at Aeon spend more than 500 ringgit. Okay, so this is the hypothesis that the researchers would like to confirm. And what he or she will do is he will deliberately select a sample to confirm their opinion. By how is by selecting those with many shopping bags. Okay, so this will end up with respondents that spend, maybe most of them will spend more than 500 ringgit, and the researchers neglect those who don't have shopping bags for them. So this is what the second point is trying to explain, right? And number 3 is misspecifying the target population. Example, does not include all observation unit in the target population. Okay, so let's look at this one. This is very interesting because by time the definition of the target population might change. For example, in Malaysia we have a belia. Okay, in certain years, the belia, if I'm not mistaken, is those who age from 15 to 29 years old, and in some years, it is those who age from 15 to 40 years old. So there are different definitions of belia, okay, at 2 different times. So let's say you would like to conduct a study and you are using the outdated definition of belia, and you use and the sample of the target population of your study is only those who age from 15 to 29 years old. What happened is this is the recent one, and by having this target population, you do not include those who age from 30 to 40 years old. These people are not included in the target population, even though they are also a belia. Okay, based on the current definition. So this is the misspecifying the target population, or it also can also be called as undercoverage. Okay, it can also be called as undercoverage. Okay, this is also misspecifying the target population and undercoverage at the same time. And the difference between misspecifying the target population and undercoverage is undercoverage is more on like the use of outdated sensors. For example, in Malaysia, we have census in year 2000, 2010, and I believe the recent one is 2020. From 2010 to 2020, there are a lot of increase in the number of people in Malaysia, for example. So if you use the outdated census in year 2010, then many of the Malaysians are not included in your target population because you do not use the recent one. Okay, so that one is called as undercoverage. Okay, and the next one is substituting a convenient member of a population for a designated member who is not readily available. So for this one, let's say there is one household selected. This is a selected household, randomly selected household, and you already go to this house three times, and nobody was at home. So what happened is, since there is no one here at this house, you go to the next house, and this house is not randomly selected. This can in research you cannot do this. Okay, you cannot simply substituting this randomly selected house here with the house that is not selected as the respondent. Okay, so that is I believe it's the 5th point. And number 6 is failing to obtain responses from all the chosen sample. This is low due to the low response rate from groups of people. As I've mentioned earlier, in Malaysia, usually we'll have like, for example, 60% response rate. And from this 60%, 60% response rate overall. Okay. Now, let's say we divide the population into two areas: rural area samples and urban area sample. The response rate at the rural area sample is maybe high, 80%. Okay, and the response rate at the urban area is 30%. Because they have different lifestyle, they have different, maybe those who live at the urban area need to go to work, but those who live at the rural area, they don't have specific working hours and so on. So this is what happened. So when these two are combined and a statistics is produced, this statistics is a biased statistics because the response rate at the rural area is high, while the response rate at the urban area is low. So what you can do to solve this problem is maybe you need to apply weightage to make sure that the proportion of sample at the rural area and the urban area is equal to the proportion of their population. Okay, and I will discuss this in more detail in our next chapters. Okay, and the last one is the number 7 here is allowing the sample to consist entirely of volunteers. This is always used by the market research company in which they have a panel data. Okay, market research company, they have a panel data in which every time they would like to conduct a study, they will just blast the questionnaire, okay, to the panel data. Questionnaire blast to the panel data, and this panel data is those who are registered with the company to become the respondents. So those who are registered with the company, we can say that these are people who are exposed with um, market research, or maybe they are exposed with the company, and those who are don't have the exposure, they will not become the panel data, part of the panel data. So what happened is the statistics that we are going to produce is also tend to be biased. Okay, it tend to be biased. But however, you can use the panel data when you just want to like explore what's in trend, explore what's the current needs of the people and so on. But this type of study cannot be generalized to the population. Just for the exploration to make improvement for certain products. That's it. And next is on the measurement bias, 1.4. And by end of this session, you should be able to understand the meaning of measurement bias and how it can occur. Okay, and now I think let's look at the measurement bias, right? These are the examples of where measurement bias can occur. And let's look at the first one. People sometimes do not tell the truth. And usually people do not tell the truth when the questions asked are sensitive questions. So sensitive questions can be things like the use of drug, and maybe the salary, or maybe if problems in their family, okay, family problems. So these are sensitive questions, and I believe that not everybody are willing and are comfortable to share with others about the truth, about their use of drug, for example, and family problems and the salary because of certain because the information might affect them. So that's the first one. People sometimes do not tell the truth. And let's look at the second one. The second point is people do not always understand the questions. And this is the reason why we need to have a pre-test, pre-test and pilot test prior to conducting our actual study, because in this pre-test and pilot test we are able to like identify the problems with the questionnaire. Maybe the questionnaire consists of ambiguous items, or the questionnaire consists of a double barrel items, or recall dependent items. And we are going to discuss the types of questions in the questionnaire that should be avoided in our next chapter. Okay, so that's the second point. People do not always understand the questions, and if you come up with a questionnaire, please make sure that you have pre-tested the questionnaire and pilot test the questionnaire before you conduct the actual survey. Okay, we are going to discuss in more detail about the pre-test and pilot test in the next chapter. And the next one is people forget. So I usually find a question that should not be asked to the respondents in medical fields of studies. Okay, medical field of studies. So the type of question, the example is like this. For example, the questions ask the respondent about the times of having headaches in the last 2 months. How many times have you experienced a headache in the last 2 months? So these kind of questions is we also call it as a recall dependent question, and people forget. People cannot know how many times they are having headache in the last 2 months, or maybe last week also, we cannot know. Okay, so that is where a measurement bias can occur, because if they don't know, they might be just telling or give us the information that is not true. And the next one is people give different answers to different interviewer. Again, this is depends on the comfortability of the respondents. For example, for certain questions like the fertility question kind of things, the male respondents may give different answer to the male interviewer. Okay, for example, to the male interviewer, he will respond, yes, he is having a problem with fertility, and maybe the male respondent will give a different answer to the female interview because he doesn't feel comfortable to share the sensitive information with the female interviewer. So that is why some studies have set out that male interviewer will be interviewing the male respondents, and the female interviewer will interviewing the female respondents only. This is especially for research that consists of sensitive questions. And next one is people may say that what they think an interviewer wants to hear, or what they think will impress the interviewer. Okay, this can also happen in a study. So that is why when receiving information from the respondents, we should not give like give an expression. Okay, never give an expression, because this will change the answer given by the respondents. And the next one is number 6. Okay, 1, 2, and 3. Number 6 is a particular interviewer may affect the accuracy of the response by misreading questions, recording responses inaccurately, or antagonizing the respondents. This is what I said by giving an expression to the respondents was once we receive the information from them. Okay, so this should be avoided by the interviewer, and for national level studies, usually we need to train the interviewer. Okay, and it maybe took weeks or months to train the interviewer, make them familiar with the questionnaire to avoid this kind of problem. And number 7 is certain words mean different things to different people. So this is again why a pre-test and a pilot test is very important, because certain word may interpreted differently by different respondents. For example, here, do you own a car? Okay, so it can be a few interpretation can be made from this simple question. For example, does it refer to the household? Okay, is this car owned by the family or the individual, the respondents? Okay, if yes, maybe if he or she doesn't own a car, and his or her family do own car, so what happened is he or she might respond yes, even though the question is specifically asked to her. And maybe some of the respondents will ask, are pickup trucks included as car? Okay, so these are kind of things, questions that need to be avoided, need to be pre-tested and pilot test, and it need to be very clear. Okay, maybe you need to give an example. of like car, maybe MPV, SUV, or pickup trucks included. Okay, so this will help the respondent give the correct answer. Okay, and the last one is question, wording, and order have a large effect on the responses obtained. For this one, I will share with you later on how we can decrease the response bias by reordering the questionnaire by its construct. Later on, we will discuss about this further. Okay, and now let's move to the next one, 1.5 questionnaire. By end of this session, you should be able to write and test questions, provide some general guidelines and example. But for this one, again, I will skip this one because what is included in this slide is a very simple explanation. It is just a points of how to have a question, a good questionnaire actually, and I will share with you a more detailed questionnaire. For a more detailed slide about constructing a questionnaire, and you can go through that slide to get more information. I think it would be very helpful for you when constructing questionnaire. If you refer to the slide given. So these are the points, and I think it is just points, and you can go through it yourself first for this one, as I will share with you the more detailed slide of how to construct a good questionnaire. And the last subtopic for this chapter is the sampling and non-sampling errors. By end of this session, you should be able to understand sampling and non-sampling errors and how to avoid them. Okay, so sampling and non-sampling errors, the margin of error given in polls is an expression of sampling errors. The error of the result from taking one sample instead of examining the whole population. All right, so usually in a study, we can set what is the margin of error in our study. It can be 5%, sorry, 3%, 5%, or 10%. And some studies may have a higher margin of error, like 50% to 20%. Okay, it depends on the scale of the study. It depends on the types of the questions asked. Depends on the respondents as well. Okay, to set what is the suitable margin of error for your study, I recommend you to refer to the previous study. Okay, refer to the previous studies that is the same as the one that you are going to conduct. Okay, and the next one is selection bias. This is the first one. The second one, selection bias and inaccuracy of responses are example of non-sampling errors, which are any errors that cannot be attributed to the sample-to-sample variability. Okay, so we have also discussed about this, about the selection bias. Okay, and you should avoid the selection bias to make sure that the non-sampling errors in our study can be minimized. All right, and the last one is selection bias can be reduced by using probability sampling methods. And we have also discussed in our last class the probability sampling methods. There are 4 altogether. The first one is the simple random sampling. The second one is the systematic random sampling. The third one is the stratified random sampling, and the last one is the cluster random sampling. Okay, so by having or by using any of the sampling methods listed here, then the selection bias can be reduced because all the samples will be randomly selected. Okay, randomly selected, in which it means that when it is Randomly selected, it means that the researchers do not select who the respondents. Okay, researchers do not select the respondents themselves. It is based on the random selection. Okay, it is based on the random selection, and accurate responses can also be achieved through the first one is careful design and testing the survey instrument. This is what I mentioned by having a pre-testing and pilot testing before conducting the actual study. And also the second one is training the interviewers. And the last one is again pre-testing the survey. All right. To pre-test the survey is actually like uh, you need to go to the field. You need to experience first what will be uh, what will be the interviewers go through during the survey. How about the transportation, the working time, and so on? Because it may affect their health, it may affect their like motivation and so on. And this would also affect the uh, responses obtained. Okay, so I think that's all. We have covered everything in chapter 1, and for a few things that I have not discussed in further, it will be discussed in our next class in more detail, because maybe the points in this slide is not very uh, you know not very detailed. So yeah, I think that's all. Thank you very much, and see you again in our next class. Thank you.